Hi, folks. I'm Conor Gaughan. Welcome to Consensus in Conversation, the podcast where we talk with innovators, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who are building successful businesses while helping us build a better world. We're continuing our special three-part series recorded live from the PowerCast stage at CLEANPOWER 2025 in Phoenix, Arizona. And in today's episode, we dive into one of the most pressing topics in renewable energy, strengthening America's grid infrastructure to meet tomorrow's energy demands. Joining me for this conversation are Miguel Prado, CEO of energyRe, and Frank Macchiarola, Chief Advocacy Officer at American Clean Power. We're talking about unlocking massive potential in clean power, from utility-scale solar projects and underground transmission to ambitious offshore wind initiatives. And in this episode, we explore the urgency around modernizing our grid infrastructure, why investments in reliability and resiliency are crucial, and how the industry can overcome the regulatory and economic challenges currently shaping our energy landscape. Miguel and Frank also highlight how clean energy projects are driving economic development and job creation in communities across the country. Stay tuned for an insightful discussion about how these industry leaders and their organizations are not only powering America's future, but creating the framework for a resilient, clean energy economy. All right. Good morning, Clean Power 2025. I am thrilled to be back here on the PowerCast stage for the first PowerCast of the year. My name is Conor Gaughan. I am the publisher and CEO of Consensus Media and the host of Consensus in Conversation, a podcast where I talk to the CEOs, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders who are shaping a better future through business. We're kicking things off today with two leaders who are doing just that. We've got Miguel Prado, CEO of energyRe, a company driving massive investments and innovation in transmission, solar, wind, and storage. And Frank Macchiarola, Chief Advocacy Officer here at ACP, helping steer the industry through critical policy waters and a very busy man this week. We've only got 24 minutes and 11 seconds left, so we're just going to jump right in. Miguel, you've led organizations through explosive growth on multiple continents, and there's a lot going on in the industry right now. So I want to start big picture. What are the macro trends that you're focused on that are top of mind for you right now?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here at American Clean Power Conference. Talking about your question, the biggest trend is actually a positive one because there is a sentiment in the sector with all this uncertainty that sometimes is a little bit negative. But the reality and the frame is that the most important trend that we are seeing is the increase in demand. The power demand in the US is growing at a pace that is completely unprecedented. We are expecting a growth of 50% between now and 2035, which we haven't seen in the last 3 decades as a result of the penetration of artificial intelligence, data centers, and also the electrification of our lives with EVs, more onshore manufacturing, and so forth. So if I have to pick one trend, I would say that the increase in demand is the most important one and the biggest driver of our business going forward.
Just to drill down on that a second, it does feel like the demand story was really the story behind energyRe's inception. And it's a relatively young company, but today developing 16 gigawatts of renewables, 500 miles of transmission. How are you thinking about navigating the industry challenges with that demand trend in front of you?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remove uncertainty in the sector right now. That is something that affects every business. We are now at a moment where we have quite a lot of uncertainty in terms of what is happening with the IRA in the tax bill, what is happening with the tariffs. All of that is posing challenges to our businesses in terms of procurement, in terms of planning, how we are going to invest, and even attracting capital. So I think that I'm always very optimistic. I hope that in a few months, all that dust will settle and we will start to see again a less uncertainty in this sector, which is infrastructure. And infrastructure requires stability, requires business certainty, which is what we need right now.
I think that's the perfect segue, Frank, for the question on everyone's mind this week, which is, What's happening in Washington?
Yeah. So first off, Conor, thank you for hosting, and Miguel for joining and for being a great member of ACP. Every conference has a theme, and I think this theme thus far for 2025 Clean Power seems to be cautious optimism. We're optimistic about the huge growth that our industry has seen over the last several years and continues to see. And we're also optimistic that we can meet the demand that Miguel laid out for power over the next 15 years. But we're cautious given the policy and headwinds in Washington, D.C. that we face. So your question, what's going to happen? It is the $4.5 trillion question. Right now, Congress is considering a massive tax bill to extend President Trump's first tax cuts. That's something that I think businesses across the United States in our industry would support. Largely, it's to stimulate economic growth, to give money back to the taxpayers so that they can invest in our future, in our economy. We don't see any reason why Congress should, quote, pay for those tax cuts on the backs of the very things that are providing economic growth, creating jobs, and meeting the energy moment that we described. And that's right now what the House of Representatives is trying to do. So they've pushed through a significant reduction in the energy tax credits that have stimulated growth in our industry. We're hopeful, first off, that we can continue to influence the House to move away from that policy, but also the Senate, which always operates as sort of the cooling to the heat of the House, that the Senate has a more reasoned approach to the tax cuts. We understand that tax incentives are not forever. We understand that they were to develop and to build and to grow the renewable energy sector, but to put them on a cliff so quickly, so rapidly, creates the uncertainty that Miguel talked about. And at the absolute worst time when we have the demand that Miguel talked about right down the road. So we're working very hard. We're optimistic that we're going to make changes to the bill, and we're working very, very hard to make that happen.
Yeah. I want to,
Two quick comments about that. I mean, first of all, renewables is the only energy source which is available to be deployed in the short term at the scale that is required. So that is something that the ACP is doing an amazing job. I mean, trying to showcase that in the interconnection queues, the time to market of renewables and the deployment of those renewables is the quickest way to expedite the deployment of energy in this country right now. And the second thing also that I would like to point out is that those tax credits that we get, people tend to call them a subsidy. I never call them a subsidy. A combined cycle, a coal plant, they get paid for capacity, which is actually an attribute that is additive to the characteristics of a combined cycle. At the end, they can provide capacity to the system that renewables don't do, but they pollute. I mean, no one mentions that recently. Maybe I'm politically incorrect to say that the gas pollutes, but it's true. They pollute, and we do not. So we are paid tax credits for that reason. We all agree that we need to have some kind of phase down. But again, we haven't been subsidized for such a long time. We just have been paid for the same thing that in Europe, they call carbon pricing. In the US, we normally prefer to put a carrot, which is a tax credit, instead of gas pricing on top of the coal plants. That is the big difference, but it's not a subsidy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I would jump in there. We utilize the tax code to incentivize behavior all the time. Probably most of the people in this room benefit from the mortgage interest deduction because we want to incentivize people to own homes because that's good for society. It drives economic growth. It raises standards of living around the country. The convention center here, I'm sure, received a very nice tax treatment when it was first built because Phoenix recognized that they wanted to bring people to their city to support the surrounding restaurants and hotels. And again, provide good paying jobs for the people in Phoenix. That's the same thing that's going on with tax credits in our industry. We're providing the energy that America needs. We're providing the jobs and the economic development. Most of those tax credits are going to Republican states and districts. And so if policymakers really focus on that, they won't think about these tax credits as a way to pay for legislation. They'll think of them as a benefit to the country that's helping meet the demand that we have. And again, to Miguel's point, also balancing our energy mix. Right? There's no question that the positive attributes of renewables, we all know them. There's also no question that energy policy shouldn't, at least at this point, be a choice between resources. We don't have that luxury in this country. We need every single resource that we have domestically to bring to bear on this demand that is facing us. If we want to win the AI digital demand, fight with China, we're going to have to build everything.
Yeah. I want to dig in on the economic development side of this. And Miguel, you've got quite a few big, important projects in the works in some of the places that Frank mentioned where there's a vested interest, I think, in the jobs and in investment coming into the community. So you've got the So Green HVDC link, first of its kind infrastructure project. 1.5 million Midwestern homes will come onto the wind and solar grid in the nation's largest electricity market, which will also enhance system reliability and resiliency. I think $2 billion in economic development was the last number I saw for that. Substantial jobs. You've got the Lone Star Solar Project in South Carolina, the largest of its kind battery on the DESC network. You've got the Leading Light Wind Project, 1 million homes, 700 jobs. When you think about those and the issue of uncertainty and the opportunity for economic development and jobs, like how are you talking to communities, engaging with communities and leaders to try to get this message out there?
Yeah. Look, just to put an example, you mentioned 3 projects. So Green, for example, which is a transmission line that goes from Iowa, where there is a significant amount of wind energy available, to Illinois, where there is a lot of development of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and so forth. It's a project that is going to reduce the price of capacity in PJM, which is a big problem. Everyone knows, everyone have seen PJM capacity prices multiplied by 10. And the reason is because there is no capacity. And the solution, one of them is transmission. If we build high voltage DC, which is dispatchable transmission, and China has built more or less 70 times the same transmission, interregional transmission that we built in the US. Well, it's very easy because in the US, we didn't build nearly anything, HVDC interregional. So that project, in terms of contribution to the communities, we are doing a project labor agreement. So we will have all the support of labor because we are including and engaging with them. And also it's a project that is underground, that provides significant savings for the ratepayers in the future with what I said, and also bringing power from an area which is super efficient to another area which is not so efficient in terms of wind resource. And finally, it provides, as I said, a lot of reliability. And communities understand that. Just to give you a figure to illustrate this, in Europe, the average outage of the last few years based on the interruption index was 30 minutes. Put a number in the US. Without taking into account weather events, it was 3 hours and a half. If you put weather events on top of it, it's 5 hours and a half. So we are talking about a very weak grid that we need to reinforce.
Yeah.
And that is only one of the projects that we see so many benefits for the communities that they really need to be built if we have the opportunity.
Yeah. Frank, it's a reminder, some of the folks I've met at ACP that are in local communities on the ground are such exceptional examples of building community engagement. I'm curious how you think about the work of engaging local communities, whether it's getting transmission lines approved or even, talking to leaders now about the importance of these projects at the national level. Like, how are you guys thinking about community engagement from the grassroots all the way up to the grass tops?
Yeah, I think we have to think of community engagement as a mature industry does. I spent about 8 years of my career in the oil and gas industry. It is one of the largest challenges that faces that industry, whether it's to site a pipeline project or to get permits for a refinery in a local area. If you're not showing the people in that community the benefits of that project, you're going to run into enormous amounts of problems at the state and local level, and you're not going to get it done. I saw that time and time again. The same applies for our industry. Now, Miguel talked about the benefits that we bring, but we need to go out into the community and sell those benefits to people. The improvements in the tax base that we bring, the creation of local jobs, the benefits that our economic development bring to schools and hospitals and the local community. All of that needs to be at the forefront of discussion when we decide to bring a project to a particular community. We also have to be a part of the community. Our industry should not be represented as some headquarters somewhere else and a project here. We need to make that connection to the community. We need to be in the community. We need to work with local leaders and business groups and communities to be a part of the community. I would say it's one of the biggest challenges that our industry faces. And as we continue to develop more and more projects, the scale of this industry over the past 3 years relative to the first 40 is tremendous. And that's brought a lot of positive things, but it makes community engagement all the more important.
Yeah. We started this conversation a little bit on the demand side, Miguel, and you guys have recent partnerships with Google, Amazon, Department of Defense. I would imagine that that's helping catalyze the capital markets excitement about this. You also raised $1.2 billion project expansion recently. What do you think investors in the capital markets need to see or understand, in particular at this moment of both explosive growth on the demand side, but also some of the uncertainty coming from the regulatory regime?
Yeah, what I think they need to see is stability. I mean, investors do not understand uncertainty, don't like uncertainty. They may understand it, but they don't like it. So in order to bring much more capital into the energy sector, I'm talking about not only renewables, but in general, we need, as Frank said, all of the above right now. We need to build as much energy as possible. And in order to bring that capital, what we need is certainty and consistency. These projects are developed with a horizon of 5 to 10 years. So we cannot be exposed to waves that with one government, we do one thing, and with a different government, I mean, we don't want that.
Right.
We just want to make these projects happen, again, in the energy sector. And for that, the most important thing, again, is stability. For our customers also, it's very important to see the projects being delivered. And they are buying renewable energy from us because it's very efficient. And I want to highlight that we continue to be the most efficient source of energy in the market, the cheapest source of energy in the market. And also because of the specific characteristics of renewable energy, which is clean energy. So those two things are really, really appealing for the big customers.
Yeah. Flipping the script a little bit, Frank, I'm thinking about consumer demands. And, Miguel talks about the uncertainty around reliability being a problem for a lot of American homes and the opportunity to drive down prices with more energy and better transmission. Curious how that message can get out there to American consumers and how that might be utilized to help drive more favorable policy outcomes.
I think American consumers and American voters want certainty, and they also want a stable price environment for the things that sustain them in their daily lives. That's what the election was all about. Put aside all of the noise about the presidential election. It was about the high price of things that people were paying for their everyday lives. And so as we think about that in the context of what we're working on, we see a piece of legislation in the House that could raise energy costs for individuals on the aggregate up to $400 billion. So you think about that total throughout the economy, that's about $370 per person each year. That's a huge challenge for the country. But, backing up and thinking about business certainty for a minute, the administration over the past 4 months has really provided an environment of uncertainty. On the first day executive order banning leasing for federal lands and federal waters, put a lot of uncertainty into the energy mix. The tariff announcement in April threatening the global supply chain, put uncertainty not just in the energy sector, but across our economy. Now, we should take wins too. I think yesterday was a great sign from an administration working alongside the governor in New York to lift the stop work order on Empire Wind. That means 1,500 people go back to work on a critical infrastructure project necessary to deliver energy to New York State. So we're going to continue to work with the administration to provide that certainty. And, we're really going to emphasize the fact that our industry is not separate from the rest of the energy sector. We are a big part of the energy dominance agenda. We are a part of the solution that the president is seeking to find in our energy policy.
Yeah. As we start to wrap up, Miguel, I'm curious of what your call to action would be for both the public and the private sector when we think about scaling and we think about uncertainty, we think about demand.
Well, I think public has to demand the delivery of power. I think the American citizens, what they want is to continue thriving the economy, and especially to continue leading in this new economy, which is artificial intelligence and data centers and so forth, which we are leading. But in order to continue leading it, we need a lot of power. So I think what the public in general should demand is just get built whatever is available to get built. Just get it done. Facilitate permitting. And also don't mess with the current regulation. If you want to change the regulation, perfect. You can do it, but just put a transition period and we will all adjust. But at this very moment, which is so important, I think that what we need again is stability and focus on execution. This is what people are demanding, which is new jobs, an economy which should be thriving under the tent of artificial intelligence and technology. And if we don't capitalize on the opportunity, it's because we have done something wrong.
Yeah. Frank, similar question to you. If this audience were, in addition to industry leaders, filled with leading policymakers, and you had an audience with them today, what's the call to action that you would ask from them?
I mean, obviously the call to action today is on the tax bill. But over the long term, it's exactly what Miguel talked about. We need stable permitting that provides a roadmap to construct all of the energy that we're going to need to meet demand. You can't have permitting reform if you don't allow permits. So we're going to, we would tell the administration, lift this ban on permitting for federal lands and federal waters, and actually, has put into question the ability to permit on private lands as well. It's very similar to what happened during the Biden administration for oil and gas. We can't have every 4 years a president deciding which energy resource they want and which one they're going to take off the map. They need to decide to push all of our energy resources forward. Because again, it's a question of our own competitiveness in the U.S. For decades, we talked about not being reliant on foreign sources of energy. We have that opportunity right now. We should take it.
Last question to go. I, like you, am an optimist. So in the last 30 seconds, what are you optimistic about today?
Well, I'm optimistic about a tax bill that will consider what is necessary for our sector. I'm optimistic about the demand that we are seeing that will materialize, and all our companies will be able to build the projects that are necessary to meet the demand of our customers. And I'm optimistic about all the people and the teams that are here that work in this sector, that they will continue to grow and make our country much better, more advanced, and also cleaner.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for this Clean Power PowerCast session. There's a lot more on the stage, so we'll see you guys here soon.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
I was truly energized by my conversation with Miguel Prado and Frank Macchiarola, two dynamic industry leaders deeply committed to driving both the innovation and investment needed for sustainable and reliable future energy. To learn more, visit energyRe.com, that's energyre.com, and cleanpower.org, cleanpower.org. We'll include these links and additional resources in our show notes. This episode is part of our special Clean Power 2025 series, recorded live from the PowerCast stage in Phoenix, Arizona. You can find more episodes of Consensus in Conversation wherever you get your podcasts. Consensus in Conversation is hosted and executive produced by me, Conor Gaughan. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and Instagram at @CKGaughan. This episode was produced by Kate Tucker for Consensus Media in partnership with American Clean Power. Special thanks to our PowerCast production team, ACP's Senior Manager of PowerCast, Hannah Papp, James Lampeter of Diamond Pro Audio, and Slide Spiel Video Production. Gratitude, as always, to the team at Consensus Media, including Greg Harrigal on research and Patrick Gallagher. Consensus in Conversation can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. If you like the show, please give us a follow and leave a review. It makes a big difference. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.